All right, so finally it is the demo time, and I hope we have already fixed all the configuration that are required for the Jenkins to run very fast and smoothly as it is supposed to be. Okay, if you are wondering what I am talking about, then you have to follow the previous video where we actually saw how we can fix that issue, right? So yeah, once you are done with that thing, please follow along with this video. And if you're still facing the slowness of Jenkins, then I would recommend you to watch the previous video. Now, considering that we are done with the initial configuration, so let us start with beginning with the freestyle project. Now, here is the dashboard, and there are two things to observe. If you click on create a job, okay, it will redirect you to this page. Now, if you click on Jenkins and click on new item, it will again redirect you to the same page. Okay, so this is one of the observation that you have to keep in mind, because you won't be getting this specific job create a job button every time, because since we have installed Jenkins freshly on the system, we are getting this specific one. But mostly you have to create the job from new item. Okay, now the first thing that it is expecting is enter the item name. Now, what is this item name? Actually, it is asking you to write the name of the job. So let me just write the name of the job. It is first Jenkins Freestyle Style Job. Okay, and here you have to select the type. Now we have pipeline, we have multi-branch pipeline, but for now we are just focusing on the Freestyle project. Okay. Now here comes the actual page, the actual configuration which we have to do in Jenkins. Okay, here it is further classified into multiple configuration, general configuration, source code managed configuration, trigger configuration, environment configuration, build step configuration, and post build configuration. So let us start with the very much beginning, that is the general configuration. Now here it is giving us the box for the description. Now what is this box about and what actually it wants to say? So basically it is actually asking you to write the description of the job that you are creating for. So let's say here we are going to create a new file. So this job creates a new file and prints the current location. So basically, this is the vague description that we are writing for the current project. However, if we are working on a real-time project, we will definitely change the description. For now, for just the understanding purpose, we are writing the plain text. So this is how it will be visible over there. If you want to write the headings, that can be done using the HTML tags. But for now, we are just focusing on the basics to keep the things very much simpler. Now there are multiple options under general. See, here it is saying discard old bill. Now what is the meaning of this? Basically, if you want to know more about it, just click on this question mark. This will actually give you the entire description of what actually it is supposed to do. And if you go through the example, it is saying if a project builds some software and produces large installer, which is archived, you may wish to keep the console log and information about which the source code commits were built. While the disk space reasons, you may want to keep only the last three installers that were built. This can make sense for the projects where you can easily recreate same artifact later by building the same source and control commit again. Okay, in order to bring this thing into a good context, so basically discard old build meaning discarding the previous builds. Okay, removing the data from the previous build. Here we are not talking about the logs, but the actual files, the archival we are talking about. Second is GitHub project. Now, if this Jenkins job is dealing with any GitHub repository, you may check the GitHub project. Now, when you click on this checkbox, it will expect you to add the project URL, the GitHub repository URL. Now, further, it is saying that this project is parameterized. Now, let's say there is some builds that you are working on, there is some project that you are working on, and during the execution, there are few values that you need to change. Those things can also be automated. And here you are actually expecting the user to add some input. So here we are talking about the project is parameterized. So during the execution, it will actually ask for the user input, and based on that, it will produce the output. Okay. Next is throttle build. Now let's say there are few people who are actually triggering the build multiple times, due to which there are multiple jobs are created parallelly. So in order to avoid that, you can click on throttle build, and here you can actually define how many builds can be executed during a specific period of time, whether it can be second, minute, hour, day, week, month, or even a year. Okay. So throttle build is definitely something that you can actually use. Next is execute concurrent builds if necessary. Now let's say if you want to build parallelly So you can just check this thing. Okay. When this option is actually selected, you can just build parallel jobs in this specific job. Next is coming to the next configuration section, that is source code management. Here, basically, we are defining the source code. Let's say your code is actually stored in GitHub, okay? And here you are working on the automation. Let's say you want to build, compile, test, and then you want to create an archival. But the code is stored in GitHub repository. So at that case, you will select the source manager under Git. Now here it will again expect two values. One is the repository URL and second is credential. Now credential is not compulsory. Why? Because if the repository is public, then you don't have to pass the credential. But if it is private, then you may need to pass the pet key. All the things I will be showing you in the coming videos, so don't worry. For now, we are just going to keep things as simple as possible because this is the very first job that we are going to create. Next is trigger section. Here, basically, we can set up the automation script. Now, based on that, it can be triggered. Now, let's say you can trigger the builds automatically remotely using a script, or you can trigger the build after a project is been done, after the execution is been done for that specific one. Now again, if you're asking him to execute this specific job after one project is built it, then which project, second after which condition, whether the build was stable, whether the build got failed, whether the build was unstable, based on those conditions you can just set it up. Next is build periodically. Here it is asking you for the cron value. Next is GitHub hook trigger and GitHub ICM polling. So basically here you can add the webhooks. Now what is webhook? So let's say if you want to do event-driven build trigger, here you can define the GitHub webhooks. Next is policy. Now here you are not actually relying on GitHub. Here actually you are relying on polling. Now what is actually polling? You just have to provide the source code management. Okay. Here you can schedule it per minute, per hour, per month. Okay. Now, based on that, it will just go and check. Now, let's say if you check the add the polling for 2 minutes, it will go to the GitHub repository, check that specific branch for every 2 minutes. If a new commit is added, then the build will get triggered. If there is no new commit, then it won't trigger the build. So it is as simple as that. Now, next is environment changes. Here you can actually set up the environment. Basically, like if you want to delete the workspace, if you want to use a secret as a file, if you want to add the timestamp, all the things are actually added over here. The next is if you want to add timestamp on the console output, you can just select this one and it will actually add the timestamp when the log will be generated. Next is inspect bug log for push scan. Next is terminate build if it is stuck. And last is with Ant. If you're dealing with Ant based project, basically when you're dealing with JDK and pom.xml file, you can just check this box up. Right now, we are just focusing on the very basic project, okay, a very basic automation that is a freestyle project. So we are just going to focus on that one. We have build step and we have post build step. Now, build step is the actual place where we are going to define our freestyle project. And post build action, it's basically what to do after the job is actually done. Now, let's say if we are creating a Docker build, okay, and if the Docker build is pushed to Docker Hub registry, okay, now, what to do about the image? Okay, it is of no use for us, right? So we can delete it. In order to delete it, we can add that in the post build action. Okay, so that was the basic introduction of the options that we have in Freestyle project. Now, let us first click on add build step and click on execute shell. Here we can actually type the commands with which we need to automate. But before even doing that, let us come back to the console. And here we are going to run the commands manually. Okay, now let's say you're been given a task where you are asked to create a new file. How do you create it? You will just write touch new.txt, and in order to validate it, you will just write ls-ll and your file is present. Okay, now if you want to see the current directory, you will type pwd. All right, understood. And if you want to print any message, you just write echo hello. Now, let's say if you want to do this every day, you can set up a cron for it, definitely. But if it is something that is related to a build trigger, then definitely this project will help you out. Let us come back to the configuration section, and here we'll just run the plain command, that is echo hello, and just click on apply and save. Now, what is happening over here is, okay, we added a shell over there. That shell will act as an executor. So when we click on build now, this project will run. This job will get executed. But if you noticed one more thing, this is the job name and this is the job description which we added during the creation of this job. If you click on Jenkins, okay, this is how a job looks like. Okay, and here just notice build history. If you remember in the previous videos, I told you about build history is the place where you can see all the history of the builds. Here is something we are going to explore. Okay, now here you can trigger the builds from two places. Here, either you can click over here multiple times and your build will get executed, and also you can click over here and your build will get executed. Okay, now one more thing, if you go back to Jenkins again, if you go to build history, here it will tell you all the information about all the builds which were created. It will tell you the name of the build, time taken, status of the build, and if you want to see the console, you can click over here and it will forward you to the that specific build, and the output will be shown for that specific console. Okay, now here what sort of information we are getting? It is showing that it is started by the user Shubham. Okay, now since I am logged in with Shubham user, okay, it is telling me, okay, this build was triggered by the user Shubham. Running a system, okay, and here there is something called workspace. So whenever you create a new job in Jenkins, it creates a new workspace directory under the folder workspace. Okay, and then it will execute the script. Now, if you remember, we selected one option during the build action, that is execute shell. It created a shell script and it got executed. Now here we passed one command, that is echo hello, and the job was and it actually printed hello, and the final message is success. This was a very happy path. Okay, now let us make things complex. Okay, let us go back over here. Okay, I'll again go to configure. Now, since the project is already created, we directly jump to build step. Now, let's say, let us make this thing complex. Okay, hello, and here let me just add equals to for readability. And here, let's say if I want to print the current working directory. Okay, what I'll write, I'll just type over here, printing the current working directory. Okay, and it will actually print the current working directory by using the command pwd. Okay, now again I will add few spaces over here so that it would be easier for us to read. Now, next thing what we want to do is we actually created a new file, right? Because this job actually does create a new file. So I'll just type that name of the file, that is new.txt. Okay, and here I'll just pass one message, that is creating a new file. Okay, and it will create a new file, and post that if we want to validate it, we are going to run lsfnll, where we will say that okay, listed all the file. Okay, so this is the basic operation that will be done this time. If you click on apply and save. Okay, now let us build this job. Okay, this will be the build number 9. It follows a sequential pattern. Now, if you go over here, click on success, the green box, and you can see the logs. Okay, now again, you will check the workspace. Okay, here we have the name of the job. Script was executed. Okay, good. Now, what this script does, first it will print echo hello. Okay, hello was printed. Post that it will print the current working directory, and the current working directory is this workspace. Okay, now post that you will see we asked him to create a new file. So this is the new file, and where it is created under this workspace. If you want to see where this file is, I'll definitely show it to you. Next is we ran the command lsfnll, and it actually listed the file which was actually created, and post that the build was success. Now there is one more observation which we have to do is when you go to workspace, all the files which are created under this job will be listed over here. Okay, and if you click on wipe out current workspace, all the files which are created under the job will get deleted. Okay, now let us make life a little bit difficult. Okay, let us again go to configure, and this time we are going to run a Java program. Okay, it will be a very simple Java program, but it will definitely help you out to understand the concept of Jenkins Freestyle project, because whenever you're executing and implementing any project, Freestyle project does give you that visibility uh, to perform the action of automation in Jenkins. But first, let us do the same on our console. Let me just clear the screen first. And here we are going to make use of this basic program. And let me just copy the repo link. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is, all right, the first thing is I want to clone the repo. So I'll just write git clone. Now, don't worry if you don't know how to do this. Basically, I'm just cloning a remote repository and I will be executing a program manually into my local, okay, manually into the command line. And then we are going to do the same using Jenkins. Okay. So now the first thing is done. The first command which we executed was cloning of the repo. Now, next is we are going to go inside Java learning. And if you see, the file is currently present under first program. Okay. So let's go to first program. Okay, and if you do ls-ll, here is the first Java file. Now, how do you run a Java program? First, you need to compile it and then you can run it. So, Java C first.java. Now, here it throws an error. It says, okay, Java C is not found, but it can be installed with the below commands. All right, noted. Let me just copy this command, paste it over here. So these are the dependency which are required for the application to run. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll again run that compiler command javac first.java and again java first.java. Okay. And here you can see hello world is printed. The same operation we are going to do with this freestyle project. Let us go back. Okay. And here let us create a new project this time. How do we create a new project? Click on new item and here we'll write Java freestyle project, not project, basically job. And here we are going to select a freestyle project, click on OK. All right. Now, I want you to leave this specific section for now. Just focus on build step for now. Okay. I'll tell you how you can add the GitHub repository going forward. But for now, just focus on build step because this will, since we are in the initial phase, I don't want you to go into multiple configuration. First, focus on the basics first. It will definitely help you to understand how Jenkins works in the backend. Then we are going to see how it can be done by adding the option of Git and GitHub. All right. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to do is we want to clone the repo. So let me first write a command that it will clone the repo. So cloning repo. Okay, and what it will do, you just have to write git clone followed by the link. So let me just add the link of the repo. One sec. Okay, so this is the command which we are going to use for cloning the repo. Okay, now once cloning is done, what was the next step which we did? Okay, after the cloning was done, the next step was to go inside the repository, right? So let me just go inside the repository, changing the directory path. And here the directory path, if you go over the history, okay, we want it to go to this specific path. All right, and post that what we want to do is we want to compile the program. So Java C, okay, it was first dot Java, and then after the compilation was done, we executed Java first dot Java, and the output was visible to us. Okay, now let us make this thing a bit beautiful. So let me just copy the echo command again. Here, compiling Java program. After that, we want to execute the change. So executing the Java compiled file. Okay, apply and save. Now, what you have to do is just click on build now. This will be the first job in this Java freestyle job. What it will do, if you click over the success, if you go to the console, what it did actually, it cloned the Java learning repository to this specific workspace. Okay, and here it entered the repository. It compiled the program and then it executed the compiled file and we got the output and the build was success. Okay, now if I go over here, okay, if I click on build now, there is one thing that we need to observe. Okay, the build got failed. Now remember why? Because the directory was already existing. So what it is showing that the repo already exists. Okay, that's the reason of failure of this job. If you go over Jenkins job freestyle, if you go to workspace, And if you see, there is already a repository present. Inside that repository, all the files are present. But what if I go back to workspace and wipe out the current workspace, meaning I am deleting entire data and I'm building the data once again? Okay, it will again clone it, it will again compile it, and it will again show the result. If you go over here and if you see the console log, entire data is present. Now again going back to Jenkins, and here, if I go to build history, you can see all the history of the logs of the jobs which were executed. And basically, if it got failed, then basically it is actually showing you that what was the reason. And if you want to deep dive into that error, go on the console and you can actually see what was the actual reason using the console output. Okay. To wrap things up, this was the very basic of Freestyle Jenkins. In the next one, we are actually going to leverage freestyle in the next level, right? But for now, just go through the definition, and I just want to give you a recap of whatever we did so far. So first of all, we created a job by entering the name in this specific section. Post that we selected Freestyle Project, which is a general purpose job. Here we added a description of the job. So when you click on the job, here you will get the description. Okay. Next is discard old, which we discussed about multiple parameters, multiple configuration that Jenkins offer in Freestyle project. First is discard old build, meaning this will discard the old build. GitHub project. So when you want to make use of a GitHub repository in your job, you can make turn this flag on. Third is this project is parameterized. So when you wish to take input from the user during the execution, during the runtime, you can turn this flag on. Throttle builds. So if you want to limit the number of build execution based on the time, let's say during an hour, only 30 builds should get executed. So you can just define that under the throttle builds. Next is execute concurrent builds if necessary. If you want to allow the execution of multiple jobs parallelly, you can feel free to select with this specific one. Next, source code management. So if you want to link any repository, click on Git and it will connect your Git for pulling the code. By default, it is none. Now, next is trigger. So if you want to set up automated action, so it can be via a script, it can be via hooks. So let's say the first one, if you want to trigger build remotely, it will build via API or script. Second is if you want to build it after a specific project is done. So it will just check the dependent job is actually executed or not. Now, if it is executed, now it will ask you which job you're talking about and after what status it should be executed. So those sort of information is present over here. Now, next is build periodically, where you are scheduling the builds using cron. Next is GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM pulling. Here we are building GitHub push event. So whenever there is a push, automatically build will get trigger. Now next is poll SCM. Here we are checking the repo at interval of the changes. Now let's say after every 2 minutes, if you're setting the poll, basically a kind of cron, it will go to the GitHub repository every 2 minutes and check whether there is a new commit or not. If there is a new commit, it will trigger the build. If there is no build, then things will be as is. Moving forward with the next one and the last one, that is environment. Here we can configure the settings in the variable that is actually defined in the context in which we run the builds like credential paths and global parameters. There are multiple options that we have. That is first is deleting workspace before the build start. Here it will clean the file before the build. Next is use secrets or file. Here, basically, we are injecting the credentials securely. Third is add timestamp for the console output. It will show the time for each log. Okay. Next is inspect the build log for published build scan. It will check the logs for scan result. Fourth, fifth is terminate a build if it is stuck. It will auto stop the hanging builds which are currently stuck with Arn. Basically, it will run an Arn build using the build.xml file. For now, just not focus on Arn builds. We won't be focusing more on this one. Next is build step. Now, here we are defining the task that should be executed during the build, which we actually saw today, but we are going to do a deep dive on the following videos. Next is post build action. Now, let's say once the job is finished, what tasks to do after. Okay, so here we are defining the task that needs to be executed post the build is done. I hope today you actually learned about the freestyle project. Today you learn about freestyle project and it definitely add some value to your learnings. Okay. In the next video, we are actually going to see how we can leverage freestyle for automating the task. Okay. Today, we deliberately used the execute cell command. Why? Because I wanted you to get familiar with this tool. Because if I would have told you directly the build, it would have become very much difficult for you to understand. So that's why we are keeping things very much simpler to understand. In the next video, we are going to level up our learning journey, and I hope you will enjoy this journey with me. All right, so that was all about this video, and I will see you in the next one.